Journey into Imagination with Figment opened in EPCOT at Walt Disney World on June 2, 2002. It currently sits in World Celebration, formerly known as Future World West. The attraction takes us on an open house tour of the Imagination Institute, led by Dr. Nigel Channing, played by Eric Idle. The Institute has 5 labs, tied to the 5 senses, though we only ever see 3. As the ride progresses, we meet the iconic little purple dragon Figment. Unfortunately, in this version, he's portrayed much more like a nuisance who more or less torments Dr. Channing out of his more rigid and scientific approach to things and brings him around until they're both letting their imaginations loose. Somewhat. At the end of the ride, we are presented with a room full of figments to make us all content that we got our little dragon back. We then exit our vehicles and enter a small interactive area called ImageWorks, the What If Labs, that has some meet and greets, some interactive things, and then, as always, you exit through the gift shop. The current Imagination Pavilion is rounded out with a theater that plays, more or less, DVD special feature shorts. The Imagination Pavilion, well, lacks imagination. Though the ride is an improvement over its short-lived previous version, which only lasted 2 years, from 1999 to 2001, it is a shadow of the original. This second version, known as Journey into Your Imagination, came about after a back and forth with Kodak, the attraction sponsor at the time, who finally agreed to overhaul the pavilion, but at a much lower budget than Disney was asking. The track length was basically cut in half. Our ride would start by going through a scanner to check for imagination, which, surprise surprise, we are currently completely lacking. None, nada, zip, zero, nothing. Don't worry though, they're gonna teach us. Dr. Channing then sends us through 5 labs. This time, we actually go through all 5. Sound, illusion, color, gravity, and connections. At the end, we're scanned again, and shockingly, we are now bursting with ideas. So much imagination that the machine overloads and explodes. More or less. There are glaring issues with this attraction. Most notably, a lack of Figment, outside of a few cameos anyway, as well as a severe shortage of money, to allow creatives to use their imagination. Around this time, the Pavilion's theater played the fun and popular 4D style film Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, an entertaining movie presented to us as an awards show featuring Dr. Nigel Channing from The Ride, as well as Wayne Szalinski and family from the popular, at the time anyway, Honey, I Shrunk the whatever movie franchise. ImageWorks, the What If Labs, was a slightly more fleshed out version of what we have now, few less meet and greets, but the area in general was still lacking compared to the original. This second installment of the Pavilion was largely panned, so much so that it had an unusually short run in the park. Disney heard the outcry, caved, revamped it, and brought back Figment, leaving us with the version we still have today. 20 years later. 20. Neither of these 2 iterations feel like a spiritual successor of the original to me, and either they generally lacked or missed the best parts of Figment. They also overlooked the amazing spirit of the original attraction. The main room that housed both the queue and the load station, no hallway with doors and nods to other Disney scientists here, was filled with swirling colors, mirrors, and murals, foreshadowing what you were about to experience on the ride. As you board your ride vehicle, your journey begins as you find yourself floating in the sky among the clouds, where you catch a silhouette of an odd dirigible sort of vehicle. It was at this point you would hear the first lyrics of the iconic One Little Spark. As we round the bend and the clouds clear, the Omni-Movers rotate, and we begin our carousel movement along with this scene. Here we find large set pieces and animatronics, a full-size Dreamcatcher vehicle, piloted by a full-size animatronic Dreamfinder, who introduces himself and explains who he is and what he is doing, collecting dreams, ideas, whatever else that may spark some imagination. We are introduced to arguably the icon of this entire park, Figment. 2 tiny wings, eyes big and yellow, horns of a steer, but a lovable fellow. From head to tail, he's royal purple pigment, and there, voila, you've got a Figment. This Figment is presented full of childlike innocence and curiosity, not the nuisance we see today. Dreamfinder explains that anyone can imagine, and then both characters' minds begin to race with ideas, filling the dream bag of the Dreamcatcher. In the Dreamport, we find the idea bag being emptied into the Imaginometer, along with a deep thoughts screen box, various objects like boxed applause, a birdcage of musical notes, a fog bank. The space is filled with so much to hear and see, I'm not going to list it all. It was incredible. The rooms that follow take us on a journey through a few different areas where imagination can be used. The first room after our introduction is an art space, with colors flowing everywhere. mixing, and swirling. We see Figment amongst the colors dressed as an artist, and then a large painting that Dreamfinder is painting. He's using an oversized brush of ever-changing colors. We then move into a room of moving paper-like figures, a carousel of animals, landscapes, and decorations. It's completely white. This room sparkles as various colored lights bring things to life. Towards the end, we see Figment by a pool holding a pot, where the rainbow of colors that filled the room seem to have originated. As a kid, this room instantly caught my attention. I found myself looking everywhere, trying to find all of the shapes and animals I could see in the room. It was stunning, breathtaking even. I cannot think of a single portion of the current ride that comes close to how well this room was done, or pulls out the same feelings and curiosity that I had looking at this space. As we leave this beautiful and tranquil room, we seamlessly begin to transition to a darker, almost horror-like space, similar to a Haunted Mansion vibe. This is the literature section. The focus at the beginning of this room being thrillers, mysteries, and the like, such as The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. We see words like adventure, romance, and other story genres, then pass other words reflecting their meaning. For example, the word avalanche is shaking as if it were an avalanche waiting to fall down the slopes of a mountain. Figment stands with letter blocks flipping the word from cat to bat as a shadow behind him transforms between the two animals. We see Dreamfinder playing an organ with words coming from the pipes, and those words transforming into the thing they spelled out. We see fireworks with words like sparkle showing within the glittering rings around the explosions. As we exit this room, we pass stacks of books along with more wordplay and figures. Even Figment playing a shadow puppetry, and then later leaning into a book labeled Monsters to hold that book closed and keep the creatures inside from emerging. In this room, words seem to truly come to life everywhere you look. Next, we find ourselves in the performing arts area of the ride. We see movie posters and sets, Figment trying on costumes in front of a makeup mirror. We see a stage with the comedy and drama masks, along with Dreamfinder conducting an orchestra that seems to influence a laser show on the stage itself. The laser images make various shapes and even turn into drama and comedy faces themselves, followed by the famous Space Figment animatronic trying to hitch a ride with us. These last two rooms, literature and performing arts, without a doubt show what imagination can do. It made the idea of creativity fully tangible to me. You can feel how the written word can transform in your mind to become something. It shows how performers can change from the actors you know to the characters in the story you're watching. The edges of the sets fade, the story becomes real. You truly take a journey, go on an adventure, survive a horror, make it through some thrills, feel the heartbreak, whatever the story is trying to tell you. It's all possible. This feeling is just one more thing we don't have anymore in this ride. We leave this room and Dreamfinder can be heard saying, "And what about science?" As it echoes, we travel through a tunnel with effects and mirrors. We see a lit up globe, then Dreamfinder, tinkering with a time machine that speeds and slows as it moves forward and back. He mentions how technology can help us see nature better, which leads us to looking at screens that show water moving in slow motion, microscopic minerals turning into crystals, and plants growing from, and then back to seed. We see advancements in space, and more. As we move on, a screen appears showing Figment doing various Figment things. Just playing in the window, doing backflips, running around, just being the Figment we all fell in love with. In the start of this last area of the show, we see Dreamfinder as a fortune teller, where he and Figment discuss how we can go anywhere and do anything with imagination, which leads us to the big finale. A room featuring a central Figment on a giant spinning film reel, encircled by screens. Each screen shows Figment doing something different, something he imagines he would like to do or be. And as we move to the ride's exit, we pass Dreamfinder, this time dressed as an old-timey cameraman. And the next thing we see is a screen with a photo of us in our ride vehicle on the ride, a picture taken by Dreamfinder just seconds ago. Unlike the end of the current incarnation, the original ImageWorks was upstairs, in what is currently a mostly barren DVC lounge. There were large rooms filled with so much to do and explore. Green screen adventures with a young Joe Rohde as Dreamfinder, orchestras to conduct, touchscreen painting activities, giant kaleidoscopes, pin screens, stepping stones that made a sound as you stepped on them, the Rainbow Quarter that is also where Michael Jackson had a famous photo taken. Michael Jackson was also in the Pavilion's theater, starring in the famous Captain EO, the 4D film. The original attraction took us on a trip that showcased so many ways to use imagination and where creativity could be applied. We got fully fleshed out sequences with full sets, a longer ride track, and a true feeling of hope. The current version is severely lacking in basically all of these. It doesn't feel like it's trying to crack open our imagination. It doesn't feel like it's trying to inspire us. The rooms are labs based on 3 out of 5 senses. I still don't understand how that is meant to make any of us feel creative or imaginative. Especially when you replace giant amazing set pieces like the dirigible carousel with a small screen. In fact, the only creative thing I can think of in any way on the new version is the butterfly in a cage that vanishes as we ride by. Beeping sounds bouncing back and forth between our left and right ears, a fan turning on while the sound of a train goes by as we sit in the dark, a literal eye test interrupted by Figment that becomes a follow the bouncing head film so we can sing along to the music, and an upside down house. The creativity is just so lacking. Then to shrink the interactive area down not once, but twice, and in the end removing so much and replacing it with meet and greets, and giving us a generic experience that we can get anywhere in these Disney parks. Nothing that stokes imagination or creativity. Now, as much as I'm nostalgic for and love the original, I'm not expecting it to come back. It would make no sense to create an attraction based on imagination without using more modern cutting-edge technologies. These technologies would allow for more immersion, more mind-blowing effects, and a deeper experience. I'm hoping that the Disney company will instead set the creatives free on this one pavilion someday. Loosen those purse strings. Imagineering is an institution, and the originators. Let them show off for you. Let them remind us who they are and where they come from. Show the world. You have the established IP in Figment and Dreamfinder, so IP in the parks is not an excuse. Reunite this duo. Bring back a version of the Dreamfinder. There are comics out there. Give us the original Figment vibe back. Build the IP up even more. Explore all of these areas creativity can be applied. Make it bright. Make it hopeful. Make it inspiring again. Oh, and if you need someone to lead a team of creatives to rediscover the heart of the original Imagination Pavilion and the soul of what it could be, I think I know a guy. People that weren't fortunate enough to have experienced the original version of the Imagination Pavilion often question why the Figment character even has a fan base at all. When your only exposure to the character is as an annoying 20-year-old computer-generated nuisance, you start to wonder why anyone would even dream of queuing up for 7 hours for a popcorn bucket shaped like him. Why should he be the face of every EPCOT festival? Why would anyone like him? Figment, the little guy that skunk sprays you? Come on. Figment deserves better. So does Dreamfinder. So does EPCOT. How was that, Alicia? We good? We done? Okay, I'm gonna stop now.